Ringing the Bell, Episode 2, How Has Media Transformed? Welcome to Ringing the Bell, a podcast coming to you live from lovely Hebron Academy. If you missed our last episode about entrepreneurship, make sure to head to Spotify to check it out. I am very excited about this episode because we're going to talk about media and how it has transformed over the last few years, especially during the pandemic. As most of us know, movie theaters were closed for almost a year and a half now, and there are a lot of them that are still closed or went out of business. This forced the movie and TV industry to make major shifts in how they do things because they needed to find ways to still get their content out. We now live in a world where a lot of movies are going straight to live stream services like HBO, Netflix, and Disney Plus. Is this a sustainable strategy, or is this just a pivot for the time during a pandemic? I'm joined by three gentlemen who have a lot of experience in the world of media. I'm joined by Dylan Miniger, who is the admission creator here at Hebron Academy, Calvin Grover, who is a senior who has found a passion for photography and video. Finally, our special guest, who I've had the privilege of knowing my whole life, my brother Eric Tovel, who is a VP at Sony Animation. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me here today. I want to start by having you all give a little introduction of yourself. Dylan, why don't you start?
As Ian said, my name is Dylan Miniger, and I am the admissions media creator at Hebron. Before I was here, I was a lecturer at the University of New Orleans in the film program, and I was a filmmaker for quite a long time, doing short films and music videos and the like.
Hi, I'm Calvin Grover, and I go under the name Calvin Saves the Planet for my freelance photography and filmmaking, which I'm entirely self-taught. And over the course of the pandemic, I really came into my own as a creative.
Nice. I'm Eric. As Ian mentioned, I work at Sony Pictures Animation. I oversee a slate of movies and TV shows. They're all animated. I think from sort of all audience PG fare to R-rated, PG-13 rated stuff, to all family co-viewing material. Also, before I got into animation, I was in live action at Walden Media, and we did the Chronicles of Narnia movies, Journey to the Center of the Earth, Journey to the Mysterious Island with the Rock. I've been out here for a little over 15 years in LA doing this, and yeah, it's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining. So as I say, we're going to talk about media, and I think, the major thing that's happening now, still kind of going through the pandemic, is how, I'll just ask a question. So how has the pandemic changed how big studios like Sony or other ones get their content out to the masses?
So it's interesting. The pandemic has been a challenge. I'm just going to jump in and speak.
Yeah,
So the pandemic has been a challenge for animation. I mean, we've been busier than ever because we've been able to do everything completely remotely. That's one of the nice things where you don't have to go to set. We create the sets, we create everything. Everything can be done remotely. Whereas our live action colleagues have had much more of a struggle due to all the different sort of guidelines. But in terms of how the pandemic sort of changed big studios. Some of the studios, have their own streaming platforms, as you mentioned, like Disney has Disney Plus, Warner Brothers has HBO Max. We, on the other hand, we don't have a streaming service at Sony. And you've seen a lot of like the Disneys, the Pixars, the Marvels, the Warner Brothers of the world, they will release their movies in theaters, and then they'll also release them on the streaming platforms at the same time. And I feel like it's shifting now because a lot of places have noticed that it's had some benefits, but it's also it's had some minuses. And I feel like now, as we're coming out of the pandemic, people are wanting to go back to the theater again. I think you see it with movies like Venom, which is a Sony movie we released directly to theaters and not on a streaming platform. You saw it with the last Marvel movie, Shang-Chi. And even the last Bond movie, people are starting to want to go back to theaters. With our types of movies, since we don't have a streaming platform, we will sell to a streamer. We'll sell our movies to a streamer like a Netflix, say HBO Max, and Amazon. In fact, we released 4 movies this year. They've all been on the streaming platforms. We had The Mitchells vs. the Machines, which is on Netflix. We had one of our first musicals with Lin-Manuel Miranda called Vivo, that was on Netflix. We have this other movie we did. It's a beautiful movie called Wish Dragon, that's on Netflix. And then we recently partnered with Amazon Prime Plus, Amazon Prime, to do the 4th installment of Hotel Transylvania, Hotel Transformania. And so it really depends on the deal. It really, if the deal makes sense. But, I feel like with theaters opening up again, people are wanting to go back to theaters. That's my long-winded answer.
Yeah, I think it's interesting hearing from you in this perspective. I was genuinely curious to hear what you were saying, because I feel like I've noticed for a long time coming, there's been a major shift towards streaming. And I think a lot of that has to do with deals that are signed and so on and so forth. But I think in the very beginning of the pandemic and sort of in the beginning of the streaming age, I was a little hesitant regarding it all. But now I'm starting to see it as a bit more of a plus side. I talked to someone who had gotten a film picked up, I think by Oscilloscope or something. They sort of picked it up first choice and sent it right to their platform. And that made me realize, okay, well, now we're able to put out so much more and such micro budget projects at the same time. And I think that's fantastic. And I think COVID just sort of pushed this streaming to almost like a litmus test, if you will, to see how does it function if theaters kind of become non-existent. I mean, obviously I jumped right back into the theaters as soon as they opened, but knowing that everything exists almost in a physical platform and a digital platform almost on a release date is exciting, even if I may retain a little of my purist opinion that it should be seen in a theater. I'm trying to shake that off.
It's interesting because you mentioned that, and for your own or whoever, their own schedule or whatever, yeah, it's great to have that option. But on strictly a business side, it's been interesting, because if you look at the trends over the past few releases, where they have released movies in theaters and on the platform at the same time, there's been a massive drop off for week 2. And it's been, in a way, and this is just my own opinion, it doesn't really motivate people to really go to the theater for the extended period of time. And that's really where you're going to make a lot of your money initially is theatrically. And all these movies have been sort of put together in a way to be a big theatrical release. And so, but you've noticed, like with movies, like for instance, like Free Guy was a great example of that. Was one of the first movies that did not go to a streaming platform at the same time as it came out theatrically. It went to theaters and it did incredibly well and had incredible staying power. And after that, I think you saw a lot of studios say, who had the day and date option, which is called, to say, we may want to shift off that a little bit and do something that's just completely theatrical. And then of course those theatrical windows will shorten, instead of it being the traditional, I believe it's 90 days in theaters before it leaves and goes to an ancillary market. They will shorten. But yeah, I mean, the nice thing with all the different sort of options is exactly what you're saying, is that you have all these sort of distribution platforms now that you can see new content, and you can see all these different types of content that you may not be exposed to in the beginning.
Yeah.
One thing that as a consumer I've noticed has been it's very enjoyable, obviously, to go to a movie theater. I think I've seen only 2 films since the beginning of the pandemic in a theater. Black Widow, which again was very controversial, based on the fact that it went also live, I believe, either the same weekend or like a week after it theatrically released. I got to see it. That was like a big deal for me, getting back in the movie theater. And then I see that their box office performances dropped significantly. And then there's the controversy with like Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit, et cetera, et cetera. But as a consumer who is limited in my access to a movie theater. Like I'm living at my school right now, and due to COVID restrictions, we're not allowed to just independently go to a movie theater. We had to rent out an entire room at a movie theater to watch the Bond film at the school. And like that was fantastic. I really enjoy seeing films that are shot at that budget that need to be presented in like a cinema format in a cinema. I don't want to see it on my my phone screen or a crappy 1080p projector. Like I really want to see the if they spent that much money on shooting that film on celluloid acquisition, like I want to see it in the theater. Frankly, but it's been interesting because as somebody who spends a lot of time on the internet, on YouTube, it's almost like there are different niches for content, whether that's direct to streaming stuff or things that are independently targeted towards streaming services or online video sites, social media platforms, and stuff like that. And it's interesting to see that market, which has been dominated by content creators of a very small scale, then be put into competition with large studios that are trying to push out their content onto the internet as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, it just sort of gives you like such a bigger reach, in terms of what could be out there and who could be exposed to what content at what time. And it's going to benefit everyone. I mean, being able to access all this content literally at your fingertips is great. And one of the challenges will be when theaters are back up and opening again is getting people back to the theaters on a regular basis, and looking at our own slate and the slates of our competitors too. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that's coming out that will definitely motivate people to get back to the theater, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I think we kind of hit on it, but kind of like the next question is, how has streaming impacted the way we watch like movies and TV? And like, is that kind of what Calvin was saying? Is there now going to be a push to create movies that are just going straight to streaming? I mean, obviously that's what Netflix and those like independent ones do, but from like big studios like that, or is it more of a push to get away from that and streaming was just an end to the means until everything got back to normal?
I mean, everyone's kind of doing their thing, where Netflix, it's interesting. Netflix on their movie side, they try to release like basically a movie a week. And they've really put a ton of resources and financial resources in developing their own stuff, and developing their own movies, but also their own TV shows. And so there's going to be, they have a ton of stuff that's coming out exclusively on Netflix, and same for any of these platforms, Amazon, Disney Plus, Apple, they're all doing the same thing. When it comes to places like us, Sony, we're pretty nimble in that, of course, we're always going to be sort of looking at the theatrical distribution, but also we're developing movies that are meant to be on streaming, and so it really kind of just like diversifies our slate in a way that will just be, that'll just get more eyeballs, I think.
Yeah, I think kind of coming back to something I said earlier was that, I don't think streaming is an ends to a means. I think streaming has always sort of been a destination. We've been on that road for a while. I mean, you think HBO Max right now is putting up big numbers and getting big films, but HBO's been in this business forever. They've been making their own movies, forever, going straight onto their channel. So I think having something like Netflix now with their own stable and their own productions, it makes sense. And I think everyone could have seen the writing on the wall with that. And it's awesome because they're putting out some quality stuff. I think every market is. And I think as soon as, and I don't remember if this was a pandemic specific thing, but as soon as the Oscars lifted their sort of regulations on what can qualify, basically now they said, okay, well, we'll accept streaming. I think that made a big mark in, okay, now we can really put some of our stuff dedicated towards streaming. Once, if it doesn't have to do its festival run and we can still get it nominated, well, that's a huge push for, maybe we'll just do this whole movie with Netflix instead of shopping it around to, a whole bunch of other places. So I think it's always been there. I think it's going in an interesting direction, and I'm well along for the ride.
I mean, as a consumer, it certainly doesn't hurt to have a lot of competition in seeing who can produce the best streaming content. About a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, I shattered my collarbone, and I was in surgery, just out of really in a lot of pain, sitting on my couch for a week straight. I spent quite a few hours watching different stuff on like Amazon, Netflix, and Disney Plus are the ones that I go to. I was the target consumer certainly, and it was not a bad place to be. I'll be honest. I watched like Netflix released that week, like the Schumacher documentary that I thought was fantastic. That was, I believe, a straight to Netflix project as well. As well as there was a new Star Wars project that came out exclusively on there on Disney Plus. That was like 8 episodes of like anime. And that was fantastic as well. Just having the ability to get tailored content for streaming services anytime you want is just it's a good time to be alive for entertainment, I'd say.
Absolutely, and I think you said it. I think you said it best. It's just, you know, the more competition out there, it's just going to motivate and drive all the competitors to make stuff that you need to see, if it isn't streaming or if it's theatrical or wherever, you know. And I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, and I think, you know, no matter what in the streaming race, it doesn't matter if you're seeing it on a laptop screen or on the big screen. A good movie's a good movie. You know what I mean? You know if it's going to work from the beginning. So whether it's streaming or not, if it's good, it's good.
What have you all watched recently? You know, I should say, what is your like go-to streaming platform? Is it Netflix? Is it HBO Max? Is it Disney Plus? What is it?
I would say, no shocker here, I've always been an HBO loyalist. Amazon puts out great stuff, but I think HBO's really got me going. Aside from original content, I think the Criterion channel is a fantastic addition to the streaming family. I've been waiting for that for a long time, so that's a serious powerhouse channel.
I'd say I typically gravitate towards Disney Plus. I'm a huge Star Wars guy, so that's obvious right off the bat. But Amazon Prime has some originals that I really like. Invincible was fantastic, and then just their backlog of paying $2.99 for a movie that came out 50 years ago. Like that's great. Like I've been during the pandemic catching up on a lot of classic movie education. So that's been I'd say I usually spend most of my time on Amazon Prime actually, or just Amazon Video.
Yeah, Prime Video. Yeah, it's Invincible is pretty great. I'm a big fan of that show.
Yeah. What have you been watching?
Are you contractually obligated to say only your own podcast?
Watch it all. I mean, you know, honestly, I watch it all. You know, I've been to the theater many times. I love going back to the theater. I'm really excited for Ghostbusters Afterlife that comes out in later on this month. It's fantastic if you're a Ghostbusters fan, but if not, like it's going to pull you in and make you want to watch all those older movies like you did as well. You know, but I mean, I watch it all. I go to, you know, I'll see anything in the theater, and then, you know, I mean, there's a ton of content on Netflix, on HBO Max, on Prime Video, you know, on Disney, on Apple. So it really doesn't matter to me. I mean, I watch a ton of cartoons. I watch a lot of anime, but also, you know, I watch Squid Games like everyone else. You know, I'm just getting through the Sopranos right now, which is fantastic. There's this great show I'm a big fan of on Netflix called Maya and the Three. But then, of course, I've watched our movies on Netflix many a times. Mitchell's vs. Machines, I gotta say, is phenomenal, as is Vivo, as is Witch Dragon. And then I think when at the top of the year is when Hotel Transylvania 4 comes out, and it's fantastic, and it's a really good sort of end to it's sort of the end of that franchise, and it's a great sort of last movie. So it's really good.
So just a quick question, so kind of a side note. In your position at Sony, do you get early access to these films before their release?
It depends. Yeah. It really depends if we're looking at, you know, a specific writer, a specific director. You know, we'll get access to that sort of stuff. Or, you know, if it's award season time, depending on who it is, like they'll get access to the streamers, or excuse me, to the content early via like a you know, via like a link or whatever. But yeah, we can get access to them normally, but normally it's for a business purpose or an awards voting purpose.
Mhm. So are you involved at all with like early audience screenings or anything like that?
Yeah, we actually do that a lot for our movies. We will rent out a theater. Actually, we've done in the pandemic. It was interesting. We did a few digital audience screenings. And when in our movies are a little bit different. I mean, it's a bit different for everyone, but we will show what's called an animatic, which is basically storyboards that are cut together.
Yeah.
And there's like, voices and sound effects and stuff like that, but essentially it's the whole movie, but it's in storyboards. And we'll show it to an audience, and there'll be comment cards, and there'll be a focus group afterwards. And they're really great. They're really insightful. And even in, the one thing I do miss, because of the pandemic, is actually being able to be in the theater with the audience and actually hear what they're responding to. It's a little bit different when you do it digitally, because you'll get the cards back, but you're not obviously there to see like what they're laughing at, what they're getting emotional over, what they're smiling at. So, but yeah, I mean, we do that stuff all the time, and it's really great. And it really helps shape the movies. Because with our movies, our animated movies, they take like about anywhere between like 3 to 6 years, from like concept to screen. And we're investing, a lot of resources into those movies. So we're always trying to figure out ways to make sure they're better and expose them to an audience and shape to those audiences, responses as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if this is something I can do or not, but I'd like to volunteer to be in part of one of the focus groups for Spider-Man Spider-Verse 2, because it is a sequel to one of my top 3 movies of all time.
That's awesome.
Just like to put that out there.
Yeah, no, I got you.
If you can fly him out to California, put him up in the Beverly Hill hotel, he's very open to that idea.
Oh, absolutely. I see no issue here.
Well, Eric, you touched on something that reminded me of kind of our earlier conversation about how did the pandemic kind of change the industry a little bit. And talking about not being able to see the audience or hear the audience react to something. We, on the last film I'd done, and that was pretty much before I retired from that, right during the pandemic, was the whole time, we kept coming out with cuts, and we had to pull people one at a time into the sound studio just to gauge what they were thinking of it. And then eventually when we, got to the film festivals, all of them were online, and I could never gauge an audience reaction. And I think it was
right.
Yeah, it was different, and you're just kind of, because you're so involved with it that you can't quite step back and you're like, I need to hear someone scream at this, so
Yeah.
I understand I'm doing the right thing. But I think on the contrary, the one benefit about there was no benefits about the pandemic, but the one silver lining is a good word, was if you were in a post phase, man, it gave you a bit of a chance to step away from the project and say, okay, well, all my deadlines are now obviously ambiguous. So let me take 2-3 weeks away from this, come back with fresh eyes, and just sort of, taking your time at home, working on post. So, I don't know, just what you were saying had made me think about that in regards to the pandemic.
Yeah, it's never a bad thing to step away from something you've been so entrenched on for such a long time. I always say to writers, like, if you ever hit like writer's block, like, just step away from it for a second, and then pick it up, a few weeks or a month later, and there's always like a re-inspiration of something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, that's kind of the worst thing. You focus on something too long, and I remember when we were working on the score for this, and we'd been day in, day out for 3 weeks straight on it, and towards the end, I mean, you're tweaking the reverb on one horn just a little bit, back and forth, and everyone's into it in there, and you're like, we gotta get out of here.
Just kind of a side note. I mean, obviously, I think one of the most anticipated movies coming out is the Sopranos. Forget what it's called, but based on the Sopranos. I know Dylan's excited about it. I mean, he does look like a character from the Sopranos, but besides that, like, what movies are like do you think people should keep an eye out for that are going to be, maybe they're under the radar, but they're extremely good? Yeah, anything like that.
Well, the Sopranos movie came out.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was fun. It was a fun movie. You should check it out if you're a big Sopranos fan. And I will, it's hard to gauge because there's so much out there. But I mean, I will say, it's not our movie, but I really liked this limited series called Maya and the Three on Netflix by this guy Jorge Gutierrez. It's really, really good. But in terms of movies, like I said, like Ghostbusters Afterlife is phenomenal. It's really, really exciting. I'm so excited to see it in theaters. The next Spider-Man movie, of course, it's not obviously under the radar. That comes out in December. It's excellent.
So you've seen it?
No, I have not seen it. But I keep hearing it's just excellent. And with that team, I mean, it's going to be incredible. There are a few animated movies I'm really excited about, of course, both on streaming and they're theatrical, but it's just, it's been a challenging time for the industry, but it is a really exciting time because there is this backup of movies that are needing to come out and wanting to come out, and they will. And like you all said, with all the increased, competition in the marketplace, it's just going to provide for better content.
One thing is, as we get back to the theaters, it's like I've gotten used to the idea of, oh, this new movie has released like this, and I can watch it digitally. And so the new Wes Anderson movie coming out, or that already released, The French Dispatch. I've been on a Wes Anderson kick recently. Watched Grand Budapest Hotel, Moonrise Kingdom, and Rushmore in like the span of 2 or 3 days.
I love Moonrise Kingdom. That movie is so good.
I got my teeth pulled, so I was also after surgery just on my couch watching Wes Anderson movies.
There's so much trauma attached to your entertainment consumption.
It's true. But luckily, I live in a good time, and I have a solid internet connection.
And that's all that matters in life, is a solid internet connection.
Just moved back into dorm, and I have a projector screen in my house. It's awesome to watch movies on, and I just ordered myself and my friends a projector so that I can do streaming here. It's gonna be a good time.
That's a good call, buddy.
Yeah, it is. So overall, my experience as a consumer of media during the pandemic, it's not been too rough, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I think we were all well taken care of as consumers. And you got to thank everyone who was involved in that. And I send my support to IATSE and all of that's going on, regardless. But to go back to Ian's question, I think there's so much great stuff coming out. There's a lot of fantastic directors who really had to put their stuff on hold. And the most recent festivals, finally we got some good stuff coming out. I think later this week, Pablo Larraín's new film Spencer comes out, and I've been looking forward to that. A few sort of lower ones after Yang, the Kogonada film, his follow-up to Columbus, should be pretty fantastic if we ever hear about that. French Dispatch, Dune was next level. Been waiting for that one for.
I love Dune. That was fun, right?
That was great. It was different from Lynch's version, and I love both of them equally. But
kind of like a few more questions before we end here. Eric, since you've been in the industry for like 15 years, just your take on, film industry or like film school and stuff like that is, with everything, and I'm sure film is the same, there's always pros and cons to going to school for film or just getting firsthand experience. So kind of just wanted to get your thoughts on kind of what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you can do it, I would say definitely do it. Everyone's path is going to be different, but the more education you can get and the more ways you can be around other creatives, is always a good thing. And getting a great education in film and television and film history, I think is really, really important. But also I would also say, real world experience is also really great in terms of, if you want to be a writer, write. write something. If you want to be, if you want to be a director, direct a short with your friends and stuff, like just always kind of always be, it's a cheesy line, but like it really is true. Is like always try to be creative and always be creating. You find a lot of people who are coming up, who come out of school and say, "Oh, I want to be a writer, but I haven't written anything." And it's just like, well, you do need to. There needs to be practicality in what you want to do. So yeah, film school is great, but also couple it with like what you are passionate about, and try to see that through as much as you can.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you have a lot of experience or advice for this particular path, but I'm somebody who looked at film school, but right now I'm applying to very vastly different programs. Like I'm looking at like public policy right now, and hoping to continue doing creative stuff in my free time, and eventually, like if it comes to it, swinging it back around and doing documentary film has always been an interest of mine, and that's really where I've been pushing myself creatively. But is there really opportunities to enter the industry even without a lot of formal education, as well as I think I'll definitely need to do something like that. I'll continue to work on my portfolio and really have to be working very hard on that to create a sizable enough portfolio to impress people. But do you think that's really a viable path?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, there definitely is. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't have film backgrounds that are in the industry. There are people who don't have, who didn't go to college who are into the industry. A lot of it has to do with who you know. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard that before. Your relationships, but also, it really comes down to like what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about documentary filmmaking and it's what gets you up in the morning, you will definitely find a path. I mean, there's no like hard and fast path for anyone really. Everyone kind of finds their way, but absolutely, like you can definitely do that. There's a person I know who dropped out of college, was getting coffee for someone, at an agency in LA, and now he's running a studio. So I mean, like, yes, it's definitely a possibility, and a lot of people have done it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's probably one career that you can walk into with no experience in it. I mean, for lack of a better terms, at the very base level, film can be a very blue collar industry. Not that that's a derogatory term. I don't intend it to be. But I think, in regards to film school, speaking as someone who went for 8 years and got a master's and taught there, not bragging, some people would think that was the worst decision ever. I think that there is a lot of validity in attending a program like that, strictly because of the connections you can make. I think that is the biggest takeaway from it. Also, the fact that like in a program, you really just get set aside a lot of time to just go out and shoot things, just write things, all of that. And that's just building up a reel. So I think, it all depends where you go. But for you, I don't see any fault in going and getting a degree in public policy or environmental science and, having that inform where your creative approach will be from there. As far as making a good documentary goes, you get a good team behind you, get a couple of people behind you who maybe know a lot more of those nuts and bolts that, and work with you on that. I don't think there's any right path to the industry, and I don't think there's any, wrong path. It's a huge industry, and contrary to popular belief, it's very, very welcoming,
Yeah, and I would just also say, just to add to that, you made a really good point in surrounding yourself with some people who have some know-how, but also just for you, never, I would always just being eager, and always saying yes to things, and doing whatever you can just to be within that creative community wherever it is, and that will not only help you with your own growth, but your future career. Because like I always say to people, like, your first job's never your last job, and but as long as you make a really good impression, and you're able to make some relationships along the way, it's going to help you in the long run.
Yeah, Eric, I'm glad you pulled that bit out, because it's almost, people always say it's about who you know and it's about the connections you make, but more to a degree, it is about the people who you surround yourself with. And I think that is so important, because you never know what those people are going to do, who they're going to know. I mean, what they know, it's the whole thing is, it's a group effort no matter what. There's no, I know people buy into the auteur theory and all that, but nothing gets made without at least another 5 people. So
Yeah, I mean, for at least even in my industry, like in animation, like we're all about collaboration, and nothing gets done by one single person. It's all about a team, and everyone just need to be swimming in the same direction, and wanting to just making great stuff. So, and that trickles down to everyone in any industry, really, is sort of surrounding yourself with some good people, being eager, and all wanting to work together.
One thing this summer is I did get a lot of very positive feedback from the people that I reached out to, but I wasn't able to kind of grab onto any concrete opportunities because of the pandemic. So I was really sending emails or messages just wherever I could. I reached out to a couple directors, a couple cinematographers who one of the directors pointed me to. Cinematography is something that I'd say I'm particularly driven towards, as well as I talked to I tried to get in touch with a few advertising guys that are more local, TV broadcasters, crews that I had connections to, and nobody was able to offer me a concrete place on a set. And so that kind of did drive me away from film schools. Well, I don't really have the experience to say yes, this is, or yes, or this isn't the path for me. So I figured it's probably safer to just keep on the path that I was kind of going on, which is just independently working on projects here and there in my free time. But right now, school has been college applications and stuff. My creative energy has been incredibly low, honestly. So I'm working on it. But
how is the application process? Is it draining?
It's emotional highs and lows, I would say. I've got my early decision or early applications in, and then I still have many to go and many essays to write. I have to actually be putting my photography and videography portfolios together in the next 3 days. So I'm working on that. I need to chop my reel, which I still haven't gotten to despite having months to prepare for it. So that'll be fun. I have to that's gonna be a mess, but I'll get it done.
you got it, dude.
Yeah.
You got it.
You got it.
It'll be fun. And my photos are my photography portfolio is almost done. But yeah, I still need to get my reel together. But luckily, I'm not applying to film school. I'm applying to other schools and tapping that on as an additional supplement. So yeah, can't go wrong.
So yeah, we're running up on time, but one thing I always ask at the end of each interview is just a piece of advice you'd give someone listening that doesn't necessarily have to be wanting to go in the film, TV industry, but just something that, is motivational, or some advice you'd give people that would be listening.
These are so obvious, but I always find it that it always bears repeating, because people take it for granted. But just be pleasant. Be a pleasant person, be eager, be willing to say yes to things. But I would also say the other thing that people always, feel things are just going to happen for them, and you need to be a self-starter. And if you are out meeting someone and they give you a card and you really like them, and let's say they are a cinematographer, or it doesn't really matter who they are, but if you really like them, follow up and meet with them again, and take advantage of those small moments that you have, because you never know where, like you mentioned, you never know where they're going to lead. So I would also just say, it's just, again, it's pretty obvious, but just be pleasant, say yes, and follow up.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank Dylan, Calvin, and Eric for being part of this podcast. Hopefully you all learned something. I know I did. And I've been listening to Eric talk about movies and TV for the last 15 years, and I'm still able to learn something. So thanks for tuning in to Ringing the Bell, and stay tuned for our next episode in 2 weeks, which will be about the college process. So thanks for tuning in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.